Teaching a dog to lay down, whatever you want to call it, is usually a very easy task. However, what do you do if your dog simply won't lay down when you lure them with treats? And I'm here to show you one super easy hack you can use to make any dog lay down, tummy on the ground, all the way down. So first things first, I'll show you the easy way to do it, just in case. I'll quickly go over that. But then secondly, I'll show you this one hack I use that has never failed me with any dog ever. So the first way to do it is simply to ideally put your dog into a sit first, just because that gets your dog into more of an easy position to then lay down. Going from standing all the way down is a bit more of an escalation. So first put your dog into a sit, then take a treat and lure them down to the floor. And as soon as your dog is in that down position with all, the whole, I don't know what this part is called, but their arms on the ground and they're in that down position, you want to mark that behavior and reward them. By marking the behavior, you may or may not know, it doesn't matter. You just want to signal to them that they did the right thing. So I like to use a clicker because the clicker is a very distinct sound, and it also, really makes dog training more rapid and effective in my experience. But you don't have to. You can also use a marker word like yes or good, whatever you want to do. Either way, as soon as they're in the down position, you want to use that marker word, sound, click, whatnot, and really heavily reward them with treats, but also with praise. Lots of praise goes a long way.
Yes, good job.
And all you have to do is repeat that over and over until your dog gets used to doing down. Lure, mark, reward, lure, mark, reward, until your dog is able to then associate that behavior with a cue. So the word down, lay down, whatever you want to do, and then you start rewarding. So to incorporate the verbal cue, you want to first do it with the lure a few times till your dog gets comfortable in that position. Once your dog seems pretty reliably doing it with the lure, you could then lure. And right before your dog is about to get into the down, you can say down. And as soon as they, hit that position, again, click and reward.
Down. Yay!
Now, the timing of the verbal cue, in my experience, is not super important. You can also say down after they've completed it and reward them. But just do it in the vicinity. I prefer to do it right before they reach that position. That's what works fastest for me and the dogs I've trained, but you can also play around a little bit with the timing of the verbal cue. It's not super essential. It's not super essential because you'll just do it over and over again and your dog will realize what it means. So after you've incorporated the verbal cue, just keep doing that still with the lure many, many, many times, tens, hundreds, whatever, a lot of times until your dog is able to do it without a lure. And you can slowly fade out the lure. So for example, instead of going from luring to absolutely no lure, you could keep luring and then the next time maybe only lure halfway and see if they can get there by themselves. Maybe just point the next time and then eventually they'll be able to do it with just the verbal cue, and you can obviously mark and reward.
Down. Yes, good job. Good boy.
Now that's the easy way to teach down. That's how I taught my dog. It was super simple. But when I started professionally dog training, I realized that it's not that simple for a lot of dogs, and that's no problem because of this one hack I have. So in this training, I'm working with this adorable Chihuahua puppy named Lucky. And this becomes especially hard with these tiny, tiny dogs because I found that with the lure method that I just went over, it works out really easily with big dogs. I don't, maybe because it's so easy for them to just follow the lure and then end up in a down position anyway. But with these really small dogs, especially short dogs, they're able to reach the floor with just their mouth without having to go into a down position. So that's why I find that teaching a down to these little dogs can sometimes be a little harder. But here's the one hack to do it. So here's Lucky, the Chihuahua, and he really didn't want to do down, but no problem with this hack. So all you have to do is sit on the floor and make kind of a tunnel with your knee and the floor so that your dog can still fit under this tunnel comfortably, but has to go into a crawling position to be able to go under the knee. So then all you want to do is take a treat, preferably a high value one to motivate them more, and lure them to go under this little tunnel you've created with your foot or leg. As soon as your dog is in a down-ish position, the reason I say down-ish is because since they're crawling sometimes, they're not going to be perfectly in that down position. But at the beginning, you want to be graceful or you want to be gracious. So as soon as your dog is in a down-ish position under your knee, you're going to mark and reward them. Lots of praise again. This is really important.
Bing. Here. He's so small, I have to make my foot flat. Yeah, good job. Good job. Okay.
So you want to do this many, many, many times because honestly, in this part of the training, we just want them to be comfortable going under the knee as well. Some dogs are a little bit more hesitant to, crawl under places. So that's why we're not being super strict with what position they need to assume to get the reward and the praise. Then, as your dog gets better, you want to start leveling up the criteria a little bit until they're actually in a down position before you mark and reward. But you're still going to keep using your tunnel method.
Let's try again. Down. Is it down?
Yes.
Yes. Good job.
Now, something I find super useful is when your dog is crawling, they're going to be in kind of a weird position where they're not fully down, where like this area of their paws is fully on the floor. So what you want to do is lure them under the tunnel. Then when their body is for the most, like just in the middle of under your little leg tunnel, you want to push the treat very carefully, obviously not in like shove it, but push the treat very carefully towards them so that they almost have to like back up a little bit with their neck. And that usually naturally pushes them into a down position. You'll see I did this with Lucky as well. With Lucky, I did this after we finished the leg tunnel method because he was doing so well. But you can do this while you're still in the tunnel phase as well. But I find that when you're trying to teach a dog to do down and they're not fully in that position and a little bit of their elbows rising or, maybe their stomach isn't fully down, you just want to gently, slowly push the treat towards their snout so that they're forced to retract their neck and also forced to then fully go into that down position. So after your dog is doing it perfectly well or just well enough under the leg tunnel, you could then move it to not using the leg tunnel because then they'll be more used to just being in that position. It's almost like a habit. Once they've done, like assumed that position several times in that leg tunnel, they're more likely to be able to replicate it without that tunnel just because they know, okay, when I do this position with my body, I get the treats. And also I've done it so many times before, it's not going to be so uncomfortable for me to get into that position from a sit. A quick bonus tip too that I wanted to mention is, as you can see here, this is something you could do as well. So when they're in a down under the leg tunnel, slowly remove the leg tunnel so that they barely notice that you left and have them practice maintaining that down position without the tunnel above them, even though they needed the tunnel to get in that position in the first place. So then once you take it out of the leg tunnel, sometimes a dog will regress a little bit so they won't easily go into a down. But again, just kind of play around with the lure. Again, try the pushing the treat towards the snout method. That really works for me and the dogs I train really well. So you just want to keep going like that and kind of playing around with it. But as long as you're consistent and you're also going slow enough for your dog to keep up with the progressions, your dog will be able to do down in no time. Similar to the first method, you want to incorporate the verbal cue once your dog is consistently doing it. You can start incorporating the verbal cue when they're under the leg, to be honest, because then it makes it easier to translate when you're not using your leg anymore. But again, it's not super, super, super essential to incorporate the verbal cue in one super specific way, as long as you're being consistent with the word you're using. And what's really important is being consistent with the marking the behavior and rewarding the behavior. Once your dog can do it, in the tunnel, leg tunnel, then they can do it out of the tunnel. Then you can again start fading away the lure and start relying solely on the verbal command, and your dog will be able to do it. What I find usually is that the leg tunnel method, once you've advanced from outside the leg tunnel method and your dog can do it reliably without the tunnel, you usually don't have to use the leg tunnel method anymore. But if your dog seems confused, in the second session, it doesn't remember it, just do a quick refresher by using the leg tunnel method again, and it should be all good. And this method has never failed me. I always try the first lure one first because it's just so much easier and less effort, and most dogs can do it. But if your dog is struggling with doing down, trust me and try this leg tunnel hack, and your dog will be doing down within one session, maybe 2 or 3. This is a great example of dog training while using like kind of physical cues, because the lure is simply not enough. And it's a great method because it doesn't hurt or scare the dog in any way, and just kind of speeds up the process to get them into that position without having to physically maneuver them. One thing you should never do, and I've seen videos of this, is to physically, pull your dog into a down by like yanking on their collar and forcing them down. That's not going to work because your dog is still not voluntarily assuming that position. All you're doing is scaring and hurting your dog, so that even if they do eventually learn what down is from that forceful training, it's not going to be in one, in one sense ethical, but also it's not going to be as sustainable, because also you're hurting your relationship with your dog every time you have to use such forceful methods. That's why I love this leg tunnel method, because it does kind of physically cue them into that position, but without hurting them and without any force or fear. Comment down below if your dog had a hard time learning how to do down and how you kind of mitigated it, or if you even use this leg tunnel method. Definitely comment down below your experiences, and don't forget to subscribe for more dog training.